We thought the battle lines were drawn, the Silva twins against the world. A bond forged in tears, triumphs, and twin tuition, seemingly unbreakable. But a stunning betrayal has been exposed from within. A seismic shift in the family. Dynamics that changes everything we thought we knew. And insider report, a whisper campaign growing into a roar. Claims Florian Sukaj has switched sides. The quiet ever-present husband is no longer a neutral party. He is no longer Darcey's confidant. He has allegedly formed a secret strategic alliance with the one man he was supposed to keep at arm's length, Georgi Rusev, and their goal to take down the Silva dynasty from the inside out. The husband's sources claim are now secretly running the show. Before we unpack this shocking conspiracy, a theory so explosive it could shatter the very foundation of the Darcey and Stacey brand, I need you to join our investigation. If you are ready to look behind the curtain and see the truth they don't want you to see, then hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the Tell All Tapes and ring that notification bell because you are not going to want to miss a single piece of evidence we uncover. This is the story of Florian's betrayal. And it begins now. To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, we must first revisit the established narrative. The carefully constructed image of Florian Sukaj that has been presented to us for years. He was the quiet anchor in the Silva storm. The man of few words whose stoic presence was often interpreted as a deep unwavering loyalty, particularly to Stacey, but by extension to the entire twin-centric universe. We saw him endure the initial suspicions from the family, the accusations of being a green card hunter, the whispers about his true intentions. He weathered the cheating scandal, a moment that nearly tore his relationship with Stacey apart, and emerged on the other side, seemingly more committed, more integrated into the family fabric. He became the default male figure, the silent observer in the corner during countless explosive sisterly confrontations. He was there for the move to Miami, the planning of the twin wedding, the endless cycle of drama that seems to follow Darcey and Stacey like a shadow. His role appeared to be one of support. When Darcey would spiral, caught in the throes of another heartbreak or self-doubt, it was often Florian who would offer a clipped yet seemingly sincere piece of advice. Just be strong, Darcey, he'd say, his heavy accent lending a certain gravity to the simple words. He was the one who would listen, nodding patiently, as Darcey recounted her woes with Tom, with Jesse, and most significantly with Georgi. He was positioned as the inside man who, despite his allegiance to Stacey, could see Darcey's pain and offer a brotherly shoulder. This was the Florian we were sold. A man who, after a rocky start, had finally understood and accepted the core tenet of the Silva family that the twins' bond was paramount. And his job was to support that structure, not question it. He was a piece on their board, a supporting character in their story. But what if that was all a performance? What if behind the quiet nods and the monosyllabic words of comfort, a different story was unfolding? A story of exhaustion, of resentment, of a man reaching his breaking point. The seeds of this alleged betrayal were not planted overnight. They were sown over years of relentless cyclical drama. Think about it from Florian's perspective. He is a man who came from a different culture, a different world, thrown into the high-octane, emotionally volatile environment of the Silva sisters. Every argument is a category hurricane. Every disagreement is a declaration of war. He has been a constant passenger on their emotional roller coaster, and for a long time, he just held on for dear life. The true catalyst, the moment the quiet observer allegedly became a secret revolutionary, appears to be the pressure cooker environment of the last resort. It was here, surrounded by other dysfunctional couples and forced into intense therapy, that the cracks in Florian's facade began to show. For the First time, he was in a setting where the Silva twins' behavior was not normalized. It was being actively analyzed, dissected, and challenged by professionals. He was hearing perhaps for the first time from an outside authority that the chaos he was living in was not normal. And it was here that Georgi Rusev re-entered the picture not as a villain but as a reflection. The old narrative would have us believe that Florian viewed Georgi with suspicion as the man who had hurt Darcey and by extension disrupted the family harmony. He was on Team Stacey, which meant he was by default anti-Georgi. But our inside sources paint a very different picture. They allege that on the set of The Last Resort, Florian started to see Georgi not as an adversary, but as a fellow soldier in the trenches. He saw in Georgi's eyes the same exhaustion, the same shell-shocked look of a man who had also been through the silver ringer. Imagine the two of them sitting just feet apart during a group therapy session. Darcey is having a dramatic, tear-filled breakthrough. Stacey is offering her uniquely blunt brand of support, which often sounds like an attack. The therapists are trying to navigate the emotional minefield. And in the midst of it all, Florian and Georgi make eye contact. A simple fleeting glance. But in that glance, a universe of shared experience is communicated. The unspoken understanding of what it's like to love a Silva twin. The frustration of being constantly misunderstood. The sheer mental fatigue of navigating their world. This was not a look of rivalry. It was a look of recognition. It was the birth of the brotherhood of the Silva husbands. This brings us to the motive, the driving force behind this secret alliance. Pure unadulterated survival. Florian, according to this theory, realized that his own marriage, his own sanity was in jeopardy. He loved Stacey. But he could see that the codependent, often toxic nature of the twin bond was a constant threat to their stability. Every time Darcey had a crisis, it became Stacey's crisis, which in turn became Florian's crisis. He was perpetually caught in the crossfire. If he sided with Stacey against Darcey, he was accused of being divisive. If he showed any sympathy for Darcey, he risked Stacey's wrath, being seen as disloyal. It was an impossible no-win situation. He had seen what this dynamic did to Georgi. It chewed him up and spit him out, only to be drawn back in again. Florian allegedly decided he would not suffer the same fate. He realized the famous Silva family motto, Silva Strong, was a double-edged sword. It meant unity, but it also meant that if one twin was sinking, she was determined to pull everyone down with her. The only way to survive, he concluded, was to break the code. It was to form an alliance with the one other person who was not Silva strong by blood. The other outsider who had been granted entry into this chaotic kingdom, Georgi. The goal was no longer to just survive each day. The goal was to take control of the narrative, to manage the chaos from within, and to protect themselves and their respective relationships from the collateral damage of the sisters' eternal war. It was a desperate gambit born of years of accumulated stress. He wasn't just trying to save his marriage. He was trying to save himself. And this is where our investigation takes a stunning turn. We have obtained what sources are calling the Husband's Playbook, a series of allegedly leaked text messages between Florian and Georgi. Now, for legal reasons, we must present these as a speculative graphic, a recreation based on insider accounts. But the content is so specific, so chillingly plausible that it forms the backbone of this entire conspiracy. These are not just texts of two guys complaining about their partners. This is evidence of a coordinated strategy. Imagine Florian late one night after a grueling day of filming typing a message to Georgi. The graphic on your screen shows a speculative text. Florian, she's starting again. The Miami move. How it was all for her. A few moments pass. A reply from Georgi. I know the script. Darcey did. The same with the move to Connecticut. Stay calm. Don't engage. Just nod. This is strategy. The gray rock becomes so boring, so unresponsive that the person creating the drama has nothing to latch onto. But it goes deeper. Another alleged exchange. Georgi, she's bringing up the money, the provider thing. I'm losing my mind. Florian's reply is swift and tactical. Florian, this is code red. You have to use the pacification protocol. Agree. With her. Tell her she's right. Tell her you're working on it. Yes, my angel. Of course, my angel. Repeat until she calms down. We'll talk later. The pacification protocol. A term so clinical it's terrifying. It suggests a pre-planned rehearsed method for handling their partners, treating them not as wives, but as volatile situations to be managed and de-escalated. The most damning of these alleged texts outlines their core philosophy. A message from Florian. Just nod and agree with everything she says until the cameras leave. Remember, the fight is not with them, it's with the situation. We have to be a team. Georgi's reply. I'm trying, man. She's starting about the money again. Says, I'm not ambitious enough. Florian's response is the key to this entire alliance. A message of solidarity that reframes everything. Florian, I know Stacey is the same way. We have to stick together, you and me. They can't break us if we are united. This wasn't just commiseration. This was the formation of a pact, a secret union codeine named Operation Silva Shield. Designed to protect the husbands from the emotional shrapnel of the twins' lives. They created code words. They developed strategies. They became each other's handlers, coaching one another through tense situations in real time. The quiet man in the corner was no longer just an observer. He was a field general directing his fellow soldiers on the battlefield of reality television. This secret alliance provides a shocking new context for one of the most explosive moments in recent Darcey and Stacey history. Stacey's furious accusation that Darcey told Florian to leave her. On the surface, it looked like a classic Silva sister blow-up. Darcey overstepped and Stacey retaliated with righteous fury. But this theory posits a much darker, more complex reason for Stacey's rage. Her fury wasn't just about what Darcey said. It was because she had discovered the alliance. She had found out about Florian's betrayal. Imagine the scene. Maybe she glanced at Florian's phone and saw a text from Georgi. Maybe she overheard a hushed phone call. At that moment, her world collapsed. The betrayal was twofold and infinitely more painful than a simple sisterly squabble. First, there was the betrayal of her own sister. Darcey, actively trying to sabotage her marriage. That was a deep wound, but one that was, in the Silva universe, somewhat familiar. The sisters had been crossing lines with each other for decades. But the second betrayal was the one that cut the deepest. It was the realization that her own husband, her rock Florian, had been confiding in, strategizing with, and forming a secret brotherhood with Georgi Rusev, the enemy. He had gone outside the sacred bond of their marriage, outside the sacred circle of the family, and found solace with the one person he was supposed to be united against. Stacey wasn't just mad, she was blindsided. Her anger was the eruption of a woman who realized she was being played by everyone. Her husband was managing her. Her sister was trying to get rid of him. And the two men at the center of their lives had formed a pact that excluded them entirely. She felt doubly betrayed, isolated, and utterly alone. Her lashing out wasn't just a reaction to Darcey's words. It was a desperate, panicked Response to the discovery that the entire power structure of her family had been secretly rewired behind her back. She was no longer a queen in her castle alongside her sister. She was a pawn in her husband's game of survival. With this new lens, we can now go back and reinterpret countless past scenes, and they transform from mundane family drama into chilling evidence of a long-running conspiracy. Let's look at those moments where Florian appeared to be defending or calming Darcey. We all remember them. Darcey would be in tears, convinced Georgi didn't love her, and Florian would sit with her, his expression unreadable, and offer a few simple words. Darcey, relax. He loves you. We saw this as him being a kind, supportive brother-in-law, but view it through the prism of Operation Silva Shield. He isn't offering genuine support. He is handling her. He is executing a pre-planned maneuver discussed at length with Georgi. The objective, de-escalate the situation as quickly and efficiently as possible for the sake of peace and quiet. He is running a play from their shared playbook. His calm demeanor is not a sign of strength. It's the detached professionalism of a bomb disposal expert. He's saying the lines he knows will work. The phrases that he and George I have determined are most effective at short-circuiting a Darcey spiral. He's not trying to help her heal. He's trying to get her to stop talking so he can have minutes of silence. Every reassuring pat on the back, every patient nod was a calculated move in a larger strategy. Consider the family dinners, those notoriously tense affairs. We would see Florian silent at the end of the table watching as a fight inevitably erupted between the sisters or between Darcey and Georgi. We interpreted his silence as him being uncomfortable or simply choosing not to get involved. The new interpretation is far more sinister. He wasn't just observing. He was gathering intelligence. He was watching the twins' tactics, learning their trigger points, analyzing their patterns of attack and defense. He was a double agent, seemingly on their side, but secretly reporting back to his co-conspirator, Georgi. A text sent from under the table. She's using the "you don't appreciate me" line. Prepare for tears in minutes. He was a strategist mapping the emotional battlefield. Those moments when he would step in to mediate, offering a simple, seemingly common sense solution. Those weren't impartial attempts at peace. They were tactical interventions designed to steer the conflict in a direction that benefited the husband's alliance. A way to shut down a line of argument that was getting too close to their own vulnerabilities, or to subtly shift the blame from one of the men onto one of the sisters. Even his interactions with Georgi on camera take on a new meaning. The awkward, stilted conversations, the bro hugs that seemed to lack warmth. We saw it as two men who were forced to be civil for the sake of the women they loved. But what if the awkwardness was the strain of maintaining their cover? They couldn't be too friendly on camera lest they aroused suspicion. They had to play their assigned roles. Florian, the loyal brother-in-law. Georgi, the problematic ex. Their public interactions were a piece of theater, a carefully managed performance to hide the deep strategic communication happening behind the scenes. The real conversations, the real bonding was happening over encrypted text messages and furtive phone calls. When the cameras were off and the sisters were asleep. Every scene we have ever watched featuring these four individuals must now be re-examined. The alliances we thought were solid were fluid. The loyalties we thought were ironclad were in fact a sham. Florian Sukaj, the man we saw as a simple, quiet husband, may in fact be the most cunning and manipulative player in this entire game. A grand puppet master, pulling the strings for his own survival. The quiet stillness we mistook for passivity was actually the coiled silence of a predator, waiting, watching, and planning his next move in a war no one else even knew he was fighting. The discovery of this alliance by Stacey wasn't the end of a storyline. It was the inciting incident of a family civil war, and the first shot had just been fired. The entire house of Silva, built on the foundation of an unbreakable twin bond, was now teetering on the edge of total collapse, brought down not by an external enemy, but by a rebellion from within. The ramifications of this discovery are catastrophic, sending shockwaves through the entire Silva ecosystem. The foundation has been rocked, and the aftershocks are reshaping the landscape of the family in real time. This isn't just about a few secret text messages. It's about the complete and total recontextualization of years of their lives broadcast to the world. We must now become forensic investigators of the past, examining key moments in the Darcey and Stacey saga. Under the harsh revealing light of this new conspiracy, let us begin with one of the most formative events in Florian and Stacey's relationship, the cheating scandal. At the time, the narrative was simple and painful. Florian was caught in a compromising situation with another woman. A video surfaced and Stacey's world was shattered. We watched her pain, her indecision, her eventual hard-won forgiveness. We saw Florian as remorseful, humbled, and ultimately grateful for a second chance. He had made a grave error and he had learned his lesson. But what if the lesson he learned wasn't what we thought it was? What if the cheating scandal was in fact the brutal but effective training ground where Florian formulated the core principles that would later become the foundation of Operation Silva Shield? According to this theory, the cheating scandal was Florian's crucible. It was his first real direct confrontation with the raw unfiltered power of the Silva emotional machine. He saw firsthand how Stacey's pain was amplified by Darcey's, how a personal crisis immediately became a family-wide 5-alarm fire. He experienced the interrogations, the tears, the threats, the ultimatums. And in the middle of this chaos, he discovered a fundamental truth, a key vulnerability in the Silva armor. For all their talk of being Silva strong and not needing a man, their deepest fear is being alone. He watched as Stacey, despite her anger and humiliation, grappled with the terrifying prospect of ending the relationship. He saw that the pain of his betrayal was for her almost equal to the pain of a future without him. And so he learned that forgiveness in the Silva universe is not just a gift. It is a necessity for their own emotional survival. He performed the role of the penitent man perfectly. He was sorry. He was broken. He would never do it again. And it worked. He was forgiven. He was brought back into the fold. The lesson was seared into his brain. You can survive almost any mistake if you manage the fallout correctly. You must be willing to absorb the initial emotional explosion, weather the storm of accusations, and then play on their fundamental fear of abandonment. This knowledge became his superpower. It was a brutal lesson learned at Stacey's expense, but it was a lesson that would inform every strategic decision he made. From that point forward, he realized that direct confrontation with the Silva twin was a losing battle. Logic does not work. The reason is irrelevant. The only way to win is to play a different game entirely. You must manage their emotions, not their arguments. And you must understand that their ultimate loyalty is to the preservation of the relationship itself, almost regardless of the man in it. This cynical but arguably accurate assessment of their psychology became the first chapter in the husband's playbook. A lesson he would one day pass on to his beleaguered brother-in-arms, Georgi. He didn't just survive the cheating scandal, he graduated from it with a doctorate in Silva Twin emotional manipulation. Now, let us fast forward to an event that was supposed to be the ultimate celebration of the twin bond, the twin wedding. On the surface, this was the dream realized. Darcey and Stacey walking down the aisle together, a testament to Their inseparable connection. But behind the scenes, this theory suggests a frantic coordinated effort by Florian and Georgi to prevent the entire event from imploding. For the sisters, the wedding was a branding opportunity, a fairy tale to be broadcast. For the husbands, it was a logistical and emotional nightmare to survive. Consider the arguments over the wedding details. The sisters wanted extravagance, a spectacle befitting their brand. The husbands, according to our insider reports, were pushing for simplicity at every turn. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. They knew that a bigger, more complex event meant more variables, more stress, and more opportunities for a classic Silva meltdown. Every decision, from the venue to the guest list, was a potential landmine. The alleged text messages from this period show a desperate level of coordination. Florian Stacey wants a cake with tears and fireworks. This is insane. Georgi's reply. Tell her the venue won't allow fireworks. I told Darcey the same thing about the doves. We have to create fake obstacles. They were creating a reality within the reality. A set of logistical rules that didn't actually exist. All to manage their fiancé's expectations and keep the event from spiraling into a vortex of competitive extravagance. They weren't planning a wedding. They were managing a crisis. The most critical part of their alleged strategy was presenting a united front. The sisters have a time-honored tactic. Divide and conquer. They will often play their partners off each other. Well, Florian agreed with me, Darcey might say to Georgi, or Georgi is fine with it, Stacey might say to Florian. The alliance was formed specifically to counteract this. They made a pact, sources claim, to never disagree in front of the sisters on any major wedding decision. They would have their discussions in private, formulate a joint position, and then present it as a non-negotiable reality. When Stacey came to Florian to complain about Georgi, Florian would feign sympathy, but ultimately defend the joint position. I know, my angel, but Georgi has a point about the budget. When Darcey complained to Georgi about Florian, Georgi would do the same. He is difficult, I know, but maybe he is right about the timing. They were stonewalling them. It was a brilliant if deeply deceptive strategy. They had turned the sisters' own tactics against them. The twin wedding, the ultimate symbol of the sisters' unity, was in fact the crowning achievement of the husband's secret disunity. They survived it not by embracing the twin fantasy, but by actively working together to subvert it at every turn. This brings us to the enigma of Georgi Rusev. His on-again, off-again relationship with Darcey has been a central plotline for years. We saw him as inconsistent, hot and cold, unable to commit. Darcey framed him as a man who would dangle the carrot of marriage only to snatch it away. A man who would leave her heartbroken and alone only to reappear weeks later with roses and apologies. But what if those departures and returns weren't acts of indecision? What if they were calculated strategic maneuvers planned and executed with the help of his secret ally, Florian? The theory posits that Georgi's disappearances were tactical retreats. When the pressure from Darcey became too intense, when the emotional demands became suffocating, a retreat would be called. Imagine a coded text from Florian. It's a code Omega abort mission. Go dark for hours. Georgi would then instigate a fight he knew he couldn't win or simply pack a bag and leave, giving himself a vital period to decompress and reset. This wasn't him abandoning Darcey. It was him preserving his own sanity so that he could continue the mission. During these periods of separation, Florian would act as a spy on the inside. He would monitor Darcey's emotional state and feed Georgia critical intelligence. The texts would be like field reports from a war zone. The subject is in the anger phase. Do not engage. Repeat. Do not engage. A few days later, subject has transitioned to the tearful self-pity phase. Still too volatile. And then the signal. The subject is now in the remorse and nostalgia phase. She is looking at old pictures. The window is open. Initiate re-engagement protocol. Flowers and a carefully worded text are authorized. This reframes Georgi not as a flaky boyfriend, but as a strategic operative executing a plan. His returns were always perfectly timed to hit Darcey when she was at her most vulnerable and receptive. He would reappear armed with the precise language and gestures that Florian had advised would be most effective. This explains the whiplash nature of their relationship. It wasn't a natural cycle of breaking up and making up. It was a carefully managed campaign of psychological warfare designed to keep Darcey emotionally invested while giving Georgi periodic life-saving breaks from the front lines. Florian was Georgi's handler. His mission control guiding him through the treacherous terrain of a relationship with a Silva twin, ensuring he never got permanently lost in the fog of war. The entire romance was a staged performance with Florian Sukaj as the silent director. Underpinning all this drama, of course, is the ever-present issue of money. Both Florian and Georgi have faced endless scrutiny and criticism about their financial situations and their roles as providers. They have been portrayed as men who are content to live off the success of the Silva sisters. But the husband's alliance theory suggests that their seemingly passive approach to their careers is not born of laziness, but of a deliberate coordinated strategy of financial rebellion. They understand that in the Silva world, money is not just money. It's power and control. And they have allegedly formed a pact to prevent the sisters from ever gaining complete financial leverage over them. Their strategy is one of plausible deniability and perpetual ambiguity. They talk a big game about their ambitions. Florian has a modeling career. Georgi has his massage therapy and his crypto interests. They always have a project in the works. They make just enough effort to keep the sisters hopeful, but never enough to actually cede financial autonomy. It's a delicate balancing act. They allegedly share tips on how to handle the inevitable provider conversation. A leaked text might read, Georgi, Darcey is asking for a full financial breakdown again. What should I do? Florian's advice is tactical. Be vague. Talk about potential and long-term investments. Compliment her business acumen. Say you're inspired by her. Deflect and distract. Never give them hard numbers. It's an economic Cold War. They understand that as long as their financial situations are somewhat opaque, they retain a degree of independence. If they were to become fully integrated into the house of brand or take a traditional job that the sisters could control or monitor, they would lose their final pocket of resistance. Their apparent lack of ambition is not a character flaw. It is a shield. It is a quiet ongoing insurrection against the expectation that they will be absorbed into the Silva financial empire. They are playing the long game, preserving their own identities and options by refusing to be fully bought and paid for. This brings us to the grim reality of the present. The reckoning, the secret is out. The alliance has been exposed, at least to Stacey, and the result is the utter fracturing of the sacred twin bond, the very foundation upon which the Darcey and Stacey brand was built. The fallout is a family dynamic that is now poisoned by paranoia and suspicion. The sisters, for the first time in their lives, are truly isolated. Not just from their partners, but from each other. Think of the psychological torment. Darcey now looks at Stacey and sees not just her twin, but the wife of Florian, the puppet master, the man who is secretly coaching Georgi, manipulating her feelings and orchestrating the most painful moments of her romantic life. How can she ever Trust Stacey's advice again knowing that Stacey's husband was actively working against her interests? Every word of comfort from Stacey is now suspect. Was it genuine or was it a line fed to her by Florian, part of their larger game? The trust is shattered. She is alone in a way she has never been before. Haunted by the idea that her deepest heartbreaks were not random tragedies, but calculated moves in a game she didn't even know she was playing. Stacey's situation is equally torturous. She looks at her own husband and sees a stranger. The quiet, loyal man she thought she knew is a master strategist who formed an alliance with the enemy. He chose Georgi over her. He built a support system outside of their marriage. She is now forced to question every single interaction they have ever had. Was his comfort genuine? Was his advice sincere? Or was he just running a play from the husband's playbook? She is trapped in a marriage with a man she can no longer trust, a man who sees her perhaps not as a wife, but as a problem to be managed. Furthermore, she looks at Darcey, and while she feels the sting of her sister's betrayal, she also sees the source of her own marital strife. It was Darcey's endless chaos, her relentless drama with Georgi that pushed Florian away and forced him to seek refuge in this secret alliance. In a twisted way, Darcey is to blame for breaking not only her own relationship, but Stacey's as well. The men, on the other hand, have achieved their objective. They have survived. They have formed a bond forged in the fires of the Silver Storm. A brotherhood that has proven stronger than the twin bond itself. They are no longer isolated individuals struggling to cope. They are a unit. They have their own support system, their own secret language, their own shared reality. They may have lost the trust of their wives, but they have gained something else. Control. They have broken the emotional monopoly the Silva twins held over them. They have fundamentally and permanently altered the power dynamics of the family. The Silva sisters built an empire on the premise of their unbreakable bond with their men as supporting characters. But the supporting characters have secretly rewritten the script. The men have united, leaving the sisters divided and conquered, adrift in a sea of paranoia. The Darcey and Stacey brand is predicated on the idea of Silva strong. But the reality is that the House of Silva has fallen. It has become a house divided, a Cold War zone where husband spies on wife and sister suspects sister. The storm they created has finally consumed them. And the only two people with a lifeboat are the two men who secretly learned to navigate the tempest together. So the ultimate question is left to us, the viewers, the jury in this trial of family politics. Is Florian a traitor for siding with Georgi for committing the ultimate act of treason against the Silva dynasty? Or is he just a smart husband, a survivor who did the only thing he could to protect his marriage and his sanity from the relentless, all-consuming chaos of the twin world? Sound off in the comments.